What's your one scariest paranormal encounter experience you'll never forget? Wasn't even driving that far, but on a rural highway on the way back to my college town in the middle of the night, maybe 3 a.m. or so, I was with my friend. This is rural western Oklahoma, fairly flat. A deer or something on the side of the road, or even crossing it at night isn't anything unusual. Dark as heck. No street lights or anything, just the occasional reflector. But this wasn't a deer. It looked like a mountain lion, but it walked like a deer, and it didn't have a head. Normally, animals' eyes are reflective in headlights, but there were no eyes. It walked across the road about 50 feet in front of my car, passed through my headlights, and turned and walked back in the same direction. I thought I was hallucinating from sleep deprivation, but then my friend said, "What the flurbo was that, and where was its head?" There aren't enough mountain lions bobcats in the area for me to seriously consider that could be what it was, but I don't know what else it could be. But it didn't have a head. I have had anxiety about having mirrors in my room because although I do know it's completely illogical, I did feel like they were a sort of doorway to something and that an entity might come through it. When I was in my early 20s, I wound up living in an apartment in a while where the closet doors themselves were mirrors and I hated it, and there was a good year there where I experienced weird activity. I tried to tell myself that it was just me having some sort of sleeping problems, but it had a very distinct beginning and end, and while I've never been a great sleeper, I've never experienced anything quite like that. It started on a Halloween morning, which was creepy enough, and I woke up that morning and saw a figure walking towards me that was so clear and vivid that I thought it was my mom and literally said, "What are you doing?" out loud. When I realized that my door was shut, I completely lost it and nearly ate the floor running to turn on my lights. I slept with them on for at least a week after because that freaked me out so much. For months afterwards, I would continuously wake up to either strange visual things that wouldn't go away for an awkwardly long time, or my most common wake-up came from that feeling you get when someone says your name to wake you up, where you know you just heard your name, but because you were asleep, you're not really sure you heard it. And in the last haunting moment, I woke up and realized I heard what sounded like a very low bass growl, and when I looked at the freaking mirror in my room, I could see a face that definitely wasn't mine. That was the last thing to happen, and it ended right after that, but my paranoid lizard brain still feels like something had been trying to get at me for all of that time, and I finally actually saw it in the mirror at the very end. I was not at all sorry to leave that place. I will avoid having mirrors in my bedroom at any cost, although, fun fact, in my current apartment, there is a mirror right outside of my bedroom door, and while I almost never leave my door open when I sleep, unless I have to, I have woken up and seen figures in my doorway when I've slept with the door open before, so the mirror portal thing still feels real and scary AF to me. It started with a feeling of being watched sometimes. My mom was home alone with my infant brother. She was walking around burping him when my brother started laughing like someone was playing with him. Happened several times. My family had a dog and a cat. They used to sit side by side staring up at the empty staircase, like spellbound for hours. When my brother was big enough to move around, he joined the cat and the dog. Just as spellbound as the animals. When my brother was able to talk, he was talking to the empty staircase. Nodding and saying yes, no or I will tell them, having a conversation with someone. He would then call one of the parents over and tell them weird things. Not like normal kid stuff. He was telling my parents about a wire in the wall, stuff that needed fixing in the house, where to find the thing they were looking for. When they asked who told him that, he pointed at the air above the stairs and said him. This went on until he was about 5 years old. My brother had a really special way to walk down the stairs, so we always knew when it was him. I often woke up during the night of the sound of him coming down the stairs and entering the bathroom. A few minutes goes by and there is still no flush or sound of him climbing back up. I always decided to go and see if he needed help. The bathroom was always empty when I got there. Thinking I just fell back to sleep and missed it, I decide to check his room. I meet my mom hallway up the stairs and she asks me if he needs help. Turns out, she also heard him going downstairs and never getting back up. We check his room and he is sleeping soundly in his bed. Happened a few times a month. When I was about 15, my two younger siblings 6 and 5 at the time liked to snuggle in my bed with me. This one time, I'm still in bed but wide awake. My back is to the door. I hear the door handle being pushed down and the door opens and closes again. Footsteps are coming in my direction. I feel the weight of someone sitting behind me on the bed. It feels like someone lays down behind me. I'm waiting for an arm to grab me so the person don't fall to the floor. No arms come, and no one falls to the floor. I put my hand on the spot behind me where the weight was, nothing was there. I'm thinking I must have fallen asleep again. A few minutes later, I feel the weight again, sitting then laying down behind me. Still no arm. I feel the spot again, still nothing. Creeped out, I wrap my cover closer to me. After a short time, it happens again. This time I sit up and look around. No one there. I sat on the bed telling the air, I know you are here, and it is fine by me, but don't use my bed when I am still in it. It did not happen again. I was driving home from San Jose to San Francisco late at night several years ago. I was dead tired but wanted to sleep in my own bed that night. I was falling asleep and was behind an SUV with the spare tire on the back, the Suzu, perhaps. Anyway, my eyes are getting heavy, and I'm on Highway 101 trying to stay awake when I see a figure in white hanging from the spare tire of the car in front of me. I slightly freak out and force myself awake. I look again and see nothing but the spare tire. At that point, I figure I really should just pull over and take a nap, which I did. This other time, I'm heading to Lakeport, which is about a couple hours north of San Francisco. There's a stretch of road going over a mountain where the road is really narrow. There's a few spots where you can park your car in case of emergency. It was really late at night and I'm driving by one of those spots where a car is parked. The dome light is on in this car and I can see someone in the driver's side. I'm looking and this youngish woman with a freakishly weird smile is just staring at me as I drive past. It still gives me goosebumps now as I type this. The weirder thing is, a couple of days later, I'm on the same road heading back from Lakeport and I see the same car still parked there. Makes me wonder who that person was. So I'm seeing a hypnotherapist and I'm in the middle of a session. They're taking me on a journey into my mind and I'm climbing a staircase down towards a square building, like a control center. It's a long way, but I finally get there and I slowly open the door. Suddenly, I see something black that's hunched over. It turns, taking a second to register that I'm there, and then it rushes past me. I instantly awake and catapult up, scaring the heck out of my therapist. Freaked me the flurbo out because whatever it was, it acknowledged I was in the room with it before it fled. It wasn't a case of being a child and finally opening the closet and seeing that there's no monster. No, there was something in there and it saw me. I was 14 and we were living temporarily in a house before moving cities. The house for the most part seemed okay, but the furnace room always gave me weird feelings. Unfortunately for me, it was located directly across from the alcove where me and my little brother had our bunks. One night, I was woken up abruptly from my sleep. Despite not recalling any dreams, I was in a panicked state and covered in a cold sweat. I was on my side facing the wall and I could sense something directly behind me. I couldn't convince myself to roll over to see what it was. The very thought of it caused my heart to race and every muscle to freeze. I squeezed my eyes shut and willed myself to fall back asleep. Eventually, I was able to drift back under. Only to be suddenly snapped back to consciousness. Whatever it was still there. Directly behind me. Ominous, watching me. I couldn't move. I was frozen in place, covered in sweat and shivering. All I could do was face the wall and hope I would fall asleep again. The process repeated a couple more times before I was finally able to stay asleep. A while later I mentioned it to my brother. He told me the same night he had also woken up, top bunk. He said that he had lifted himself up to look around when a face popped up to look back at him. He hid under the covers and didn't come out until morning. I honestly cannot recall another time in my life where I have experienced such a stark terror. I wasn't ill or having any mental stresses in my day-to-day life. It only happened this one time. I was alone at home with my 2-year-old one night. He was sleeping in his own bedroom and I was in mine. I got woken up at 1:30 a.m. by the noise of my wooden bedroom door creaking open. It's unfortunately a very noisy door. I saw a white hand pushing it open, but it was high off the ground, much higher than that of a 2-year-old could reach. I called out my son's name and the hand quickly retracted. After some hesitation, I got out of my bed eventually, half asleep and confused, wondering if it might have been my husband having returned home early. But my husband wasn't in the hallway passage, and the security door at the other end of the hallway was still closed. I then noticed smoke was coming out of my son's dimly lit room. I entered the room and saw that my son was tucked in his bed and fast asleep. Then I spotted the origin of the smoke. The bottom of his bedroom window curtain was somehow inside his nightlight bed lamp, which was open at the top, and it had just begun to catch fire with a tiny flame slowly growing. I pulled out the curtain and quickly suffocated the flame by blowing on it and slapping it. I did not wake up my son. I put the bed lamp somewhere out of reach of the curtain. I believe wind came in through the window and blew the curtain so that when it settled back down, it settled on top of and inside the lamp. I never found out whose hand that was in my son the next day, was completely oblivious to the events. My husband said it was a guardian angel. There were some other smaller unexplainable occurrences after that. One time my son lost my glasses after playing with them. I told him he had to find them or else he would get punished. A while later, some pot's lid fell off inside a cupboard with a loud clanging sound, and when I opened the cupboard, my glasses were in there. I told this to the wife of our pastor, and she warned me that there is no such thing as benevolent ghosts and that is most certainly an evil presence trying to win our favor. She said she would pray for our house during her next prayer group session. She did, and we never experienced any such paranormal events again.